Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Happy, happy Friday. Happy New Year. Happy 2026. You are tuning in here to Intuition Fridays with myself, ASHALA Yardley, and my lovely co-host, Penny Kelly. Happy New Year, Penny. Welcome back.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everybody out there. It's been kind of a crazy new year, but I'm just really excited about some of the things that I keep seeing, and so I think it's going to be a really interesting and wonderful year in so many ways. So, and I
Totally.
say that because I see what is taking shape. It's coming out from the corners. So, yeah.
I absolutely agree, Penny. And for those of you watching, welcome, familiar faces. Lovely to see you in the chats. I'll pull some of your comments up here in a moment. You are, tuning into this amazing show where Penny and I came together just beforehand and decided that we want to look at this year ahead. Penny has some incredible insights of how to envision what New Earth looks like and where we're setting our sights, because this year is going to move very quickly. And it's important we know the direction we're going, I believe. So stay tuned. Before we get going, I'm just going to pull up some cards here. Obviously, you're tuning in with us, Intuition Fridays. And please like, share, and subscribe over here on the Beyond Mystic YouTube channel. And also you can follow us on the Beyond Mystic Rumble channel and streaming live on X. This is where you can find Penny Kelly. This is her website, pennykelly.com. And you can see her courses, her ebooks, her consciousness community. So many great offerings there and lots of stuff coming up even in this next year. Is that right, Penny?
That's right. Oh my. Yeah.
So go on over there and check out what Penny is sharing. Do you have a subscribers button here where people can get informed about what's coming up? Oh yeah, right there. Subscribe to Penny's newsletter. There we go.
Yep.
And stay in touch with what she has on offer.
Yeah.
So,
come on over.
Yeah. So Penny, let's get started with this topic and take it away.
Okay. So I think because it's a new year, I was telling Ashala before we got started, I went through one topic after the next, and they all just were like, yeah, and so finally I thought, okay, let's just go set up and see what comes up, if anything, or maybe we'll just talk and we'll just chat. And I came down to my computer and I see this list of this. It's a wish list that I made back in October. And I called it New Earth Tomorrow. We could have a New Earth tomorrow if some of these things would happen. And I was, writing those things down. And so I thought I would share what I wrote and what I was wishing for, because I think we need to start wishing and clarifying what we're wanting, because this is we're in the turning now, the turning point. We're in the crunch time, I guess. So, here was my concern. Everybody's like caught in their routines, and we all have our own level of ignorance, our own biases. Biases are not bad. They're the things that you want. Don't let me cast any aspersions on biases, unless your biases are really negative or they're harmful to people. Biases are what you prefer, and you have a right to prefer to think this is what I want. And that's one of the things I want to bring up that's happening to people. They're getting shamed and guilted out of their preferences, out of what they really think. And I had a conversation with somebody this week that was like a light bulb went off. But, we're right now, we in the West are so sure that we're too big to fail, too powerful to go down. That is dangerous. We are not too big for anything, especially Mother Earth. Her power compared to we are ants compared to the power of Mother Earth. So we have these leaders. We're pretty confident with our leaders at times, and we're pretty antagonistic at other times. And I think we need to be really careful about who we are getting behind, who we are supporting, and why and what, because man, the stuff is flowing in every direction. The stuff is flying in every direction. So I'm going to share some of my wishes. And I want to say, I don't think our leaders are going to save us. They are one or small group. And a lot of the leaders that you see out there are lost in the old world, the old thinking. And even though some of them are awful, some of them are not awful, and they're trying their hardest to reestablish some sort of stability. And we have to, in the midst of all that, pick out, okay, this is the leader who's got some ethics, but that's not the right vision. That's really hard. That's like getting a divorce from somebody who's provided you with everything, except it's not what you want. Okay. So people get caught. They do like the leaders. They try to pretend everything is okay. So that was my first wish. This is a whole list of wishes. And I won't read all of them because there's quite a few, but I wish they, and when I say they, I mean whoever's in control, I wish they would stop pretending everything is okay, because it's not okay for us, the people. And the more that we go along and pretend that, oh, it's okay, it hasn't touched me yet, the more that we dig deeper into our own grave. That's a mistake. So I just wish that, everybody would stop pretending everything is okay. I wish they would gather together, these are the leaders, would gather together and invite us to talk with them about how to begin resolving the situation. We put them in power, and we think we do. I'm not even sure we're doing that. But then, what are we? Just chopped liver after that? Why isn't there some kind of dialogue going back and forth between us and our leaders? Why aren't they listening? Can't they listen? What are they doing? So I wish they would nationalize the big media companies and end the lies and the propaganda. And that might not be fair to the big media companies, but by gosh, they can't tell the truth if their life depends on it. Mm-hmm. So I just don't see them going out of business because they're hand in hand with the big pharmaceuticals. So they're making enough money. But oh my gosh, their messages are awful. And their news is awful. So I wish they would end the Federal Reserve and declare bankruptcy so we can just start over with real money. And that real money should be under our control and our management, not something outside our nation altogether. And that's what the Federal Reserve is. So I wish they would change the education system and stop ruining people's lives. By the time people come out of the education system, there's a statement that my dad used to make. They don't know their rear from a hole in the ground. So
yeah, I've heard that one before too.
Yeah, maybe with a little twist on some of the words. Yeah. The education system is really ruining people because the human body, the human mind is designed to move and to move constantly and freely in a way that allows the individual to pursue those funny little things that pique its interest, the things that only that individual is interested in. And what happens when you allow that to happen is that incredible genius around that topic begins to grow and then later flowers. And we're not seeing that. People are they come out of school and they can't do anything. They don't. And I don't know what the statistics are in Canada, but they're not good in the US. A lot of kids coming out of school can't even read or write at higher than a fourth grade level. Used to be sixth grade. Now it's fourth grade, and they can't do any math at all. And they have no common sense and no skills. How are we going to have a functioning, successful group of people when they've all been ruined by education, which is really indoctrination? It's not education.
I have a point here, Penny, because all that you're describing, by the way, if you're just tuning in now, folks, what Penny and I are focusing on today is an incredible list that she has designed around what we're asking to change in order to move a beautiful transition towards New Earth. And let's start visioning, let's start actually calling in that change this year, because this is a big year for rapid change. And if we just leave it to the powers of be to direct that change, we could end up in places we're not so keen on, right? We want to be more involved in the intention setting at this point. I love where you're going with this, Penny. Yeah. And when you're describing the ability, how much effort has been put on humanity to dumb us down, contain us, manage us, control us, disempower us, and yet watch the breakout humanity where these children that are being born now, like this new generation, not all of them, I would say probably 60-70% of them are going to unfortunately get pulled off track into the whole transhumanism thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But throughout this, there are not just one or two like geniuses, innovators, new architects of New Earth. There are many, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of incredibly enlightened humans. Even in our generation, Penny, I guess you and I could be considered like some version of that, some version of that, right? Yeah. It's like we were raised in a time where you didn't think the way you and I have evolved to think. And same with Janine, right? Like we were raised where there's no way, man. We got shamed and shunned and shut down and excluded, like oppressed, whatever. So there are these incredible breakouts. And then you look at things like the innovation in everything, science, art, technology, alternative, sustainable regenerative agriculture, seed saving. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Trauma, trauma healing, family systems work, ancestral healing. Like there's breakouts all over the planet of this new Earth is growing amidst all that pressure of containment. We're still coming alive and popping out of the shell.
90 miles an hour.
90 miles an hour, like those seeds or those plants going through the pavement, breaking the pavement.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So I feel like we've got both. We've got, if you go too far into just going, oh, everything will be fine, we're all breakthroughs and we'll get through this, but you ignore exactly what you're talking about, Penny, which is we got to look at what we're asking for. What are we asking to stop? Right? When you're talking about the way that these leaders are directing us and the way that they're, there's no transparency, very little accountability. They're not sharing with us the problems so we can collectively start working on them.
Right.
And when they keep us in the dark, that creates suspicion and fear and misalignment.
And gossip up the wazoo. Gossip that, it doesn't help. It drags everybody off track.
does not help. Does not help. And you know, I feel like we need to demand that disclosure, that transparency, and enough already with the, you know, the false flags, whatever, all these, like the movie, all of that.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just dumb masses here.
I second that motion.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah, I think you know, I keep hoping that somehow there'll be a dialogue between us and our leaders, and they will understand that they can't do what they're trying to do all by themselves. They need us. But if we're not understanding what they're doing and we're not brought in to be consulted, then we don't know what they're doing and they don't know what we're doing. And if, you know, and we're pulling in two different directions. And that's a terrible mistake. We need leaders willing to communicate and be right there, honest, face to face. And so far, we don't have much of that, if at all. So, yeah, that whole thing. Speaking of sitting down with, I have another thing here. I wish they or we could sit down with Russia and Yemen and Iran and Venezuela and just say point blank that, hey, we don't want to fight, you know? So therefore, what do we need to do to make peace happen? What has to happen? The way that I was trained, you know, by somebody who specialized in training for peace, and bring conflict resolution, you know, to some successful resolution, was you had to listen to both sides. Often they both want the same thing. They're coming at it from two different angles, and they have side issues that they're afraid will destroy the one thing they want. But both sides often want the same thing. Both sides, for instance, want peace, but what does that mean? Does that mean that somebody loses and somebody wins? Because that doesn't work. It has to be a win-win. It can't be win-lose. And there's sometimes the silliest worries about what that might mean if you agree to this or agree to that. And once that gets aired, it's like, oh, I guess I really don't need to worry about that. And that it changes the whole dynamic of the meeting, of the stability of the peace. And I don't see anybody in Washington, in London, in anywhere that is really saying, what do they want? What do they need? They're like little kids, immature, that have not grown up, which is going to bring me to another thing I want to talk about. But we have to grow up. We have to. So the next thing, I wish they would make peace instead of making money the goal in life. If we have a financial system, everybody knows we need money, but money has become something kind of ugly lately. We're stealing from one another. I'm like, okay, I can see the value of a digital system, because it's really, if you are thinking that silver and gold are your biggest financial security, and then, you know, and you've got, let's say, 2,000 tons of gold in your national vaults, and somebody attacks you, what are they going to do? They're going to take your gold. They're going to take your silver. And that's crazy. If we didn't have money, we wouldn't have that problem. So we wouldn't have to be protecting our silver or protecting our gold. The hoarding, I wish they would stop hoarding, because that just says, you know, we don't care what happens to you. We just want this, and we want this for our security. The security is actually in the skill of being able to work out what does everybody need and how do we achieve fulfilling those needs. Everybody has to work at that, not just a couple leaders. That leaves everybody else to play stupid, immature games. So next thing, I wish we would stop wasting money on military weapons and focus on strategies that define excellent defensive capabilities for the planet. And that almost sounds like I'm saying the same thing twice, but there's a fine difference. When you waste money on military weapons and strategies for, attack and control, etc., that's one thing. When your whole focus, however, is on let's just be defensive, no offense, what do we need? You can develop weapons that people will back if they know that those weapons are not going to be used on them, and they're not going to be used on anyone else unless you get attacked. And then you want to have some defensive capabilities. But we don't have that. We are developing military weapons that we are using, and a lot of weapons that are secret, that have to do with energy, that I know you can see their signature when they've been used. You can feel their signature when they've been used. They won't talk about it. But when you come from elsewhere and you've seen those kinds of weapons in action, you know what to look for. And they have those weapons, and they're using them on people. It's just, there's a piece that I think it might be out today or tomorrow, that has to do with the biodigital convergence. It's like, OMG, we could maybe talk about that next time. Like, holy cow. So,
Penny, I just have something I want to say. I have something I want to say about defense. So we've gone through some shifts here, even in cyber world. And for example, StreamYard, even up till recently, we could block comments, we could put people in timeout or remove them from the chat. And over this last couple of months, it's getting very strange. So we do have, it looks like a bot in here called High Lord Commander, and I can't get them out. So I apologize, people, but we're calling you out. We don't want you in here. It's unfortunately, there's something shifted where some comments I can go in and actually address them, even communicate with them, and others are immune to me doing anything about them being here. So isn't that just so ironically, like a metaphor or illustrating exactly what we're talking about? Like that we've got these systems in place, but they're supposed to be serving us and becoming more intelligent, and they're becoming more vigilant at steering us and even manipulating us and potentially violating us. So this is such a critical moment to vote with your intention, your attention, and call that out. Like, one thing I've learned about self-defense is you call it out, you speak, not with a lot of emotion, just like with children when you're giving them boundaries. You don't get all upset and worked up. You just say, I see you, and that I'm calling a boundary. You need to stop. I insist or I demand.
That's not okay.
That's not okay. And we're watching you. So again, it's so interesting that things happen. In the ontology, as we're doing this I've been frustrated with this over the last few weeks, by the way, because a few times I've noticed that there's trolls or bots or whatever in the comments, and I can't get rid of them anymore. So there we go, folks. Just clarifying that.
They're just a nuisance. They're stupid. Okay, so let me continue with my wishes.
Yes.
Okay, so next one is, I wish they would set up a balanced budget that we, the people, have to approve. Wouldn't that be amazing? We would, we would end up doing something totally different, perhaps, with our money. And maybe it would be more balanced, and maybe people would be more taken care of, and they would be, a little less anxious and a little better fed, and a little healthier, etc. So that balanced budget that we had to approve, yeah, that would cause a few things to fall apart. But things are falling apart anyway, and all the old world is coming apart. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of funny. Sometimes kind of sad. Sometimes it's like hooray, but things change. They have to change. That's what life is. It's motion. When everything stops moving, things die. So next, I wish they would spend time envisioning a future that is beautiful, enlightening, and prioritizes human development as primary. Look at the development of the trolls. They are like kindergartners in a college classroom. Everybody is suffering from arrested development. What is the result of that? It's immaturity. It's perpetual immaturity. And that brings me to a conversation that I had with someone this week. In that conversation, she was saying that one of her boys was saying he was gay. And she said, I don't care if he's gay. And she's rattling on about gay and etc. The whole focus of her conversation was, I don't want people to think I have an opinion one way or another. I don't want them to think I'm racist. I don't want them to think that I'm for whatever gender or this, that, or whatever. And and all of her true self, which has these deep feelings and these, I'm going to call them biases because that's what they are. Mm-hmm. All of those she was having to negate because of the climate of the emotional climate that we're in, which says that you have to not care about anything that you really care about. You have to pretend that you're not caring. And what does that do to us? That really, it's like when we used to take the young bulls out of that were just born, and we would put rubber bands around their balls so that they would become a steer. They wouldn't be a bull anymore. For those who don't live on a farm, that's how you get a steer instead of a bull. And then you raise that steer for meat. So that, you cut off a part of the life force to that animal to force that life force in a different direction. Yes. And all the emotions change, all of the behaviors change. A bull is very aggressive. A steer is not. And makes a huge difference. And that is what has been happening to us. We have had all of these rubber bands around our mouth, or masks is probably the better thing, over our mouths, that we have begun to worry about. Will people say I'm racist? Will people say I'm biased? Will people say that I am not for this or that gender? Will people say I'm whatever?
I want to comment on that, Penny, because what I've noticed is we have the pendulum swing phenomena. This is common, right? And we go back, let's say 100 years or, 75 years or whatever. And for gay people or, people who had whatever opinions on things, they were being literally persecuted and murdered and all those kinds of things. So it went from you're not safe to express in whatever way. And it went all the way to you're not, we're not even allowed to question this. So we miss the sweet spot, which is where the heart-centered authenticity of the human is. We miss it because we've overshot the mark now. Now it's just as bad as the other extreme, right? We've gone from one extreme to the other, and we've missed the sweet spot is in the middle. It's like this, where we can have intellectual, intelligent discussions.
I know.
There's no, we've gone from, yeah, absolutely, these people have a reason to be fierce and really feel afraid and need to be like, feel safe enough to come out and talk and express themselves, for sure. We don't want people just beating people up in the streets or killing them or whatever. But at the same time, we don't want it to go so far that you can't talk about anything. It's so,
Right.
and both of those are completely disempowering, by the way. It's a type of violence on either end of that pendulum. It's violent to
Yes.
basically oppress people, and it's violent to say that you can't have open discussion about things. So
That's so true. And that you're basically touching on what is freedom. The most basic freedom is the freedom to be who and how you are and to learn from that. That's how it's meant to work. And, you know, sometimes people pile on and criticize and, you know, it's like, bah. But when somebody has piled on to you and they're criticizing what you're doing or saying, you end up reflecting, is this worth it? Can I change? Do I want to change? Is this who I really am? How can I do this better, differently? You know, with less antagonism coming at me or whatever. That's true freedom. Freedom to be and freedom to change. So,
and I believe that freedom is absolutely in relation to our maturity. Like, you have to be mature to be able to be sovereign and free.
mm-hmm.
And there, you know, if we haven't achieved that level of maturity, which is what you're describing in our politics, in our governments, in our, you know, in our military, in the military industrial complex, in our monetary systems, our financial systems, there's very little maturity, because maturity doesn't just look out for my needs right now. It's about win-win for all, because we realize, hey, we don't exist in a vacuum. We are interdependent here. We affect each other. We're on a small planet, right?
We
you know,
are.
we can say, oh, I don't care what's happening over there, but guess what? It'll be on your doorstep in a minute. The winds blow all over the planet. They don't stop at your front door, right? So,
yeah, that is true. Oh my gosh, very well said. Oh, yeah, there are so many things that, you know, that I think really that the thinking, it's almost like a virus that moves around the planet. Everybody gets affected, makes whatever changes, and then the next thing comes along, and then the next thing. And we keep hopefully evolving, spiraling up as a population that is really becoming very mature. So we're having, I think, our teen years right now. You know, lots of people doing and saying things that are, it's a perfect example of teenage thinking, teenage behavior. So I'll continue on here.
And by the way, we have another teenage troll here. I noticed Bamlo being inappropriate, saying inappropriate things over the last couple of months, and they didn't used to be like that. So yeah. Please stop.
Yeah.
You're not welcome here. Just to
don't respond to Bamlo
in the chats is not appropriate.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. I'm glad you're watching. I never.
Yeah, well, and just, you know, for a long time, I've just been silent and kind of trying to figure out how to respond and just trying to ignore it. But I do feel there's something we're talking about. We're talking about how we want to
become,
be authentic. We're talking about being mature and authentic.
Yep.
And it's important that we all have the ability to say, you know, even for example, I prefer that I'm able to say something and get, you know, for our audience to comment and say, yeah, that's kind of offensive to me too. Or, hey, I don't care. They can say whatever they want. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important that we all get to collectively decide that, as opposed to me just putting someone in a timeout or blocking their comment. Right.
Yeah.
So this is what's happening in our chats is a metaphor for what's happening in our world.
Yeah. somebody trying to distract from the reality with some kind of stupid, immature foolishness. So, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll keep going. Never
Yes,
mind the trolls.
great.
So my next wish is I wish they would eliminate income taxes and the many, many financial fines and games around that whole aspect of life. And people often say when I talk about eliminating taxes, well, who's going to fix the roads? Well, who's going to keep the streetlights on? And it's like, why can't we, as each group of people, the more people who come together in an area, the more power they have to say, let's get together and do this project. Why do we just hand that over to somebody else and think that we can't or we don't know how? That's, in my experience, if I could become an engineer, anybody could become an engineer. It's just a matter of understanding this is how this comes together. This is how that works. Here's the fundamentals of, this, that, or whatever. Once you learn that, there's a sense of empowerment of knowing how to make the world work. And the idea that we just hand over our money leads to resentment and the feeling of no power. And now taxes have become a huge burden. I'm going to say they're probably 40, 50% of our income, because there's some income tax, and then there's sales tax, and then there's property tax, and then there's all the other taxes that add up, all the fines, all of the, got to contribute this, all the licenses that people have to pay, all the continuing education that has to go on in the name of, you want to keep your license, you have to listen to these X number of hours of continuing education, whether that's lawyer or accountant or doctor or even teacher. I take it on myself to pay attention and continuously learn new things, but that adds up. And that there's a there's a huge uneven gap between the people who are administering that tax money and the people who are paying that tax money. And it's not a good gap. Nothing is getting done that the people paying the taxes want to see get done. And where's money going? Like in Michigan, billions of dollars disappeared. Our governor says, I'm going to fix the roads. All kinds of money went into the pockets of those in Lansing. And, here we are 8 years later, just before she's going to leave office, she fixes a few roads, a few. Some roads were just taken out, just like that's not going to be a road anymore because we don't want to maintain it. We don't want to take care of it. And so here we are, still paying taxes, and they never go backward. They just keep increasing. So I don't think that makes sense, and I think it disempowers us. If we want something to happen, we put money in.
Interesting. Crystal had a really great thought about this a year or so ago. She was like, if this is the tax money that I owe, like whatever it is,
Right.
$5,000 or 10 grand or whatever that amount is.
Yeah.
Can you give me a list of places where I can contribute that? And I will choose where I want my tax money to go, right? Like these are the things that tax money goes into. So you could say, okay, these are the federal things, these are the state or provincial things. And, you put like 20% into feds and 80% into provincial or local tax pockets. And you have the list and you say, yeah, I'm in alignment with that. I'm going to put my tax money into those things.
Oh, wow.
Right?
See, that's an example of the younger generation having ideas that we don't have.
Yeah. And just like how simple that would be. And yeah, I get that we need to be sure that all the really essentials get covered. So maybe 10% of all our taxes have to go to things that we don't have authority over choosing. But what about we all have some authority to choose where we want our tax dollars to go. And at least that would give an indication of what people actually value.
That's right. That brings up a question. Do you have your cards handy?
I do. Yeah, let's bring that.
What is the biggest obstacle for the younger generation in stepping into the role of running the world? That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a great question, by the way.
Yeah, what is, I'll repeat it for those who need to hear it twice, like I sometimes am. What is the biggest obstacle for the younger generation in stepping into their role of running the world?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Okay. So this is past, recent past.
Okay.
Or where we are right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Present or where we're going. I'm going to
Okay.
make this, let's just make this a little bit bigger here. Hold on a sec. There. Move this over. There we go.
All right.
So present and potential future. Wow. So
it lays it right out, doesn't it?
It really does. And so we've got,
wow.
You know, there's a feeling that they've kind of given up on some level, at least around the way that we are thinking and talking and negotiating.
Right.
It's the end of an old era.
Yeah.
And then there will be some time required.
Right.
They need to be given a break from the old system that just kind of is pushing them. And also even taking a break from, because the swords are all about the mental, the virtual, the digital, they need to pause and have some quiet time in meditation and contemplation. And then they need to emerge as sovereign, independent, and in the material realm. So giving them agency to ground their ideas into the material realm. So what I would see there is like where their ideas are given like support to become projects and initiatives, or to become like pilot projects or something. That we put some of their ideas into the beta test phase.
Yeah. Bring it into reality. Wow. Yeah. That 10 of swords, that means something is done. It's completed. It's over. And that I often look at that as each one of those swords kind of represents, like, one sword is education, one sword is politics, one is science, one is food, one is medicine, one is, each sword is a sector of society. And that says that if we're talking about the young people, they just don't get the thinking or the practices that stabilized each one of those old sectors at all. It's over for them. And that same thing for that middle card, the Four of Swords. It's like, it's almost like there's always a question, is that guy laying on a bed or a casket? And it really doesn't matter. What matters is that his hands are together in a prayer kind of reflection, kind of, let's think about this for a minute. And that window, that stained glass window, that is, okay, all of the pieces. When you put together a stained glass window, you have to take all these different shapes and colors and put them together to create a picture. And that is what is happening while in that meditative state, putting together a picture of a new world. And the swords hanging on the wall these are things waiting to be addressed, first, second, third. So then we have the Nine of Pentacles. 9 is the number of, okay, we can do this. We've got the whole picture is complete. Reality is renewed. That's my bird of paradise card. It's a new world. It's a new paradise. Every aspect of life that it has to do with material living, food, shelter, water, money, clothing, housing, jobs, the whole thing it's just a wonderful world. So, so I think the biggest obstacle, since that was the question we asked, is going to be those young people at their timing. Have they spent the time that they need to really reflect and put together the picture of the world that could be before they begin to act? So, yeah, it's a beautiful layout. Okay, yeah. And like Harry says, how about experience that gives wisdom? Yeah. Yeah. You run into young people who often, they're like, why do we have to do it that way? Well, that's the way it's always been done. Well, do we have to do it that way forever? No, we don't. And I often say to my kids, would you have a better idea? What is it? Let's think about that. Let's talk about that. And sometimes it's a worse idea. And sometimes it's like a magical idea. Like, oh, wow. So, yeah, that's a great layout there. So,
I think it is. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think thank you for that. All right. So let me read a few more of these. I wish, here's the next one. I wish they would make laws against spraying the skies and our food with a whole variety of poisons and toxic metals. Oh my. Our food pyramid just got turned upside down by RFK. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. We've gone from grains are at the top and meats and fats are no-no to meats and fats are at the top and grains are no-no. They're at the very bottom. And I think that that's really important because since the food pyramid moved away, I know a lot about the food history changes that were made, political changes, decisions, business decisions around food, all kinds of stuff, going back a long ways.
Yeah, like going back to the Enclosures Act in what was it, the early 1400s in Europe.
I didn't even know about that. What is that?
Where the common lands, where people before that in the serfdom, the feudal system, the common lands, at least people had the agency and the wealth, even though we consider them to have a poor standard of living, they had the agency and the wealth to always be able to feed themselves because they had livestock that they could graze on common lands. So that's meat being at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
And they were able to always have enough land available to them to grow their vegetables and fruits and, basic foods, not the grains. I have
heard of that.
Not the grains. The grains were more controlled, but they could produce, their own livestock, graze their livestock, grow the hay to feed their livestock, and they could grow their vegetables and fruits and nuts were available to them. So they had that agency. And then when the common lands were basically removed from, you had to have the privilege of buying the rights to have your cattle grazed, to grow your, your hay and your, now people couldn't have livestock. And then even they didn't have enough space to grow a vegetable garden that could feed their family. And when we took the lands, the common lands away from the common people,
I know,
that's right away we created this system where people had to buy those commodities.
Wow. I do remember hearing about that, but I didn't know that there was an Enclosure Act that actually brought that into being. So have you heard about the fellow in England who stood up to Bill Gates and said, no, you're not buying my farm? Oh my gosh. It's such an interesting story. Yeah. I forget what his name is, but
and And then
Yeah.
they tried to do that inheritance tax in the UK, and they're working on that here in North America as well, where basically if a farm is passed on
Yes.
to your descendants, your children and grandchildren, they have to pay such an exorbitant tax on it that
No,
they, and the life of farmers, you're not living in the there's like always a running amount of debt. And so
that's
they
right.
don't have that to pay that tax. And so then they have to like relinquish the farm.
Yeah, right.
And
It's a slow move to be able to collect everybody's land and claim it all. And I was not aware until just recently that there had been, well, I did know that corporations were buying housing, single family houses, because I rented one of those houses in Arkansas in a little neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood called the Legendary neighborhood. I don't know where it got its name from, but it was all of those houses were owned by corporations, and they were all single family. They were beautiful, but I wasn't aware that they were buying houses to the degree that not only did they control single family homes, but they were getting legislation passed that said zoning requires you can't build a single family home on this property. You can only build an apartment complex or condos or something like that. And I thought, oh, wow, isn't that a sneaky way to get control of all the land? There's no houses for people. Therefore, if you have a big high rise and you've got a little bitty plot of land around it, there's not enough land there to feed the people in that high rise. And they're SOL if something happens to the food system. And so I've been following this story about this farmer. He bought 1,000 acres in England, and Bill Gates came along and started in a very sneaky way buying up land all around everywhere in that area, some of the best farmland in England. And pretty soon, nobody knew that it was Bill Gates, but this one farmer said, who is this? Who's buying up all this land? Why are all my friends selling their land? And who are these companies? And he did the research, and it turned out to be Gates. So pretty soon he gets an offer. And I think, I forget what he said his farm was worth, but he gets an offer for like twice what it's worth. And he says, no, thank you. And he gets another offer for 3 times what it's worth, which was like 30 million. Okay. And he just keeps on getting offers. And finally he writes to Bill Gates and says, it's not for sale at any price. And so Gates comes back with other offers. They've made it all the way to 100 million. And he said, no, my farm is not for sale. This isn't about money. It's about ethics. It's about what is important. You can't have my land. And so Gates built all sorts of crappy, noisy, things, operations around this 1,000 acres. And the guy is like, I don't care. You can't have my land. And he's just holding his ground. And in the meantime, farmers are protesting that law. And I think they may have forced the parliament to back off, take away that law that says, no, that says, well, if you die, we get your land, because your heirs cannot afford to pay this tremendous tax. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. But
there's so many good comments here about these agendas to develop and build these the towers and the PUD planned unit developments.
Right. Yes, I think just this week Donald Trump made a declaration that corporations can no longer buy single family homes, period. No more, cut off. And he said, people don't, how do you say that? People live in homes, not corporations. And I think he's got some sort of interest rate program he's going to implement on top of that. And it's like, wow, okay. So that's a big change. Big change. So let me
Definitely.
say a couple more here.
Mhm.
I wish they would admit that their version of climate change is not true. And it's really just an oppressive scam designed to extract money from people and corporations. And that is, I have some experience, personal experience with that kind of. When we started out in 2000 with the whole sustainable development thing, by 2006, maybe, a lot of highfalutin elites had taken over and said, oh, wow, we could use this to make money. And they took off with that whole climate story and started selling carbon credits. I'm like, how does that help the pollution? You know, it's a scam. It's just a scam. And that is, you know, and they're still playing that game. They're still trying to push climate change.
And again, it creates that pendulum swing of divisiveness. Now, you know, on one side, you can't even talk about environmental impact. And on the other side, you know, the solutions are so far-fetched. It's interesting in a community that I lived in for a lot of years, where there's a lot of people doing local, small-scale, regenerative agricultural projects and have been for decades. It's an area known for that, right?
Yeah.
And one of the, you know, in the beginning, when all of this, like, you know, carbon and regenerative, sustainable stuff came out, they were like, finally, someone's listening. And oh my gosh, you know, but then it got to a point where it went way over the deep end. And they're, you know, these same governments are saying stuff like, oh, it's not safe to have a compost pile because, you know, it creates a fire hazard. And like, all these things, like, it just started making it more and more and more and more ridiculous. And the people who are the, you know, the grassroots people at the bottom that are actually doing the real work, they were like, now you guys have totally lost the plot. And now it makes us look terrible, right? Because it makes us look like these fanatical, like carbon obsessed people. And a lot of the grounded farming community, even in the, you know, regenerative environmentalists, they don't want that either.
I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The whole thing is, I often ask myself, do they really think like that? If they do, they're ignorant. They do not know anything about real life, about how things really work. They don't really, you know, the whole story about got to get rid of cows because they wreck fields. No, the opposite is true. Cows do not destroy fields. It is their poop and their stirring of the soil with their hooves that causes a massive regeneration every year. And to me, it's like a whole bunch of logical bullshit. And they just keep pushing that. And lots of people are not on farms anymore. They don't know. So they go along with, the government must know. Well, they don't. They're ignorant and they don't have any exposure to real life. And it's tragic. It's so sad. So
it really is, you know. And I pointed out I'm always kind of find myself in the middle of a lot of these things. And I pointed out to the people that were really, you're like, you know, yay, climate change. And I'm like, okay, so these governments that are putting all this money into promoting this are the same ones that, you know, my younger daughter was an activist in the forest, you know, forest management and stopping the logging, intensive, destructive logging, not against all logging, but against this, of these, you know, incredible ecosystems of ancient old growth forests, the last parts that are still available here in Canada. And they were putting a huge amount of government money into policing those protests and arresting these young people. So it's like they're saying over here, they're saying, oh, we want, you know, we want to protect the environment and sustainable and the other. And over there, we're going, but we want to log this area to the core. Yeah. And we're going to put all this money into policing this young generation of people that want us to so it's like, crazy. They basically play in both sides. They're
Yeah,
playing both
speaking
sides.
out of both sides of their mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I've got a whole bunch more. I think maybe we should save some of these for the next time. But I'll read the last one. I wish the people in control, our leaders, would spend time and money on the research that would end the thinking and insistence on attacking other countries in order to steal their oil, their gold, their silver, their food, or other natural resources. Why, instead of putting all that money into weapons that allow us to attack other people, why don't we do the kind of research that is possible, that we know is possible? Instead, they're killing the scientists that are doing that research into plasma physics that would allow them to be able to, without going into a whole lot of science, it's just possible to produce frequencies in such a way that those frequencies interact and produce matter. And when you begin to do some research around that, you begin to discover how to create different kinds of matter, or just reproduce some of the most commonly used matter, or some really exotic forms of matter that have characteristics that we need, that an evolved civilization would find very valuable. And we're not doing that. Instead, we waste all kinds of money stealing from one another. And where does that get us? It gets us nowhere. So we just need some research into some kind of future-based science. And if that could be made public and shared, I think people would get so excited about what is possible in our future. The regeneration, the manifestation, we'll just call it manifesting, because that's what it looks like. When you watch plasma, I've got photos of plasma that just, it takes shape. And if it hangs together long enough, it begins to collect particles, and those particles become matter, and the matter solidifies. And years ago, this is way back, 1980, I had a teacher of psychic development. I was taking a class from this woman, and she had a barrette from Sai Baba that had just been manifested out of thin air. And she said, when he manifested that barrette for her hair, he said, don't stress it. Don't, it's got to solidify a little more. And I was like, oh my God. And it just looked 100% solid. And it was by that time. But I understood at that point that there was this stage of manifestation where things are not, they're just in the thinking realm, and then they're in the plasma realm, and then they're in the quasi solid realm, and then they're in the solid realm, and then they solidify all the way, and we can use it fully for whatever. And I think, what about researching that process so that we can make things that we need? We're close. We're doing 3D printing. That's kind of close. So, yeah. So,
and to wrap it up, Penny, like so much of what we're talking about is that harmony in the middle ground, which is not homogenous. It's not about like we don't want any diversity. It's that we want to hold space for diversity. And thank you for working with me, all of you in the chat today. I apologize. I might have overreacted a little bit, but it is a bit scary sometimes to see that I have no control if there isn't actually a legitimate bot in the chat.
Right.
And it just feels disruptive. So I apologize if I've hurt anyone's feelings. I wasn't trying to really call individuals out. I'm just saying it's getting a bit crazy. We don't know who's doing what, right? we don't know if there's like somebody impersonating someone now and some AI, I don't know, avatar out there. So my apologies. And to recognize we are all doing our best, and that there is, there's room for the whole spectrum of diversity at this time. And we also all owe it to ourselves and each other to continue to work on creating an integral alignment, a harmonic in all of that diversity. And
Right.
not to be so polarized, not to be so black and white. And I'm on this side. No, you're on that side. No, this isn't okay. We can't talk about this. We can't do that. Like, we got to mature into being able to hold space and, like you say, demand that we can do better. We can grow stronger. We can ask our leaders to include us in these processes and just keep asking louder. And part of how you ask is to just not stop acquiescing to the old system. Just be like, no, I'm not playing along with that. I'm pulling out my shares in all of that, my stakes in the investment of all of that, and I'm putting them over here.
Yes. They need us. It just comes down to they need us. If they trusted us to elect them, which we aren't sure that we really did elect them, or somebody was pulling strings or changing ballots or whatever. But if they trust us to elect them, then why don't they trust us to talk to them and listen to our input?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Penny, I feel like in some ways we've just scratched the surface. I also have a something that I'm not going to read any of it, but I have something that I've called ASHALA's Big Dream Manifesto, and it is slightly different than yours, and it's about New Earth and how my imagining of what that looks like. It's different in that it's a lot more about sociology and culture. It's about our human experience and how we're going to grow together as communities, as families, as individuals, as sovereigns. So hopefully down the road we'll have an opportunity to share more of those tidbits of things that we've constellated with all the work we've done in these decades behind us.
Let's talk about that next time. I'll finish my few things that I've got left, and you bring in it sounds like you've done something very similar.
Yeah.
And we'll just, finish talking about, okay, how do we move ahead and make a new world? What's your wish list? So
Thank you. And I haven't got it quite finished yet, so this is good incentive to me to get back to the drawing board and complete that from my perspective right now. This can evolve and change, but we all got to start somewhere, right? So this transition out of the year of the wood snake into the fire horse, we're completing all of this old stuff. We're getting a lot off the table. A lot is cleared out. It's like doing that big overhaul, your big house cleaning. We're sorting everything right down to the last little dime, right? Everything is getting organized so that we can jump into this new energy of the fire horse, which is the biggest transition out of the 60-year cycle of Chinese astrology. The one between the wood snake and the fire horse is the most profound. And we're in the last, 5 weeks of the wood snake before we go into the fire horse. So woohoo! Hang on, folks. Keep shedding. Keep lightening your load, because you're going to need to be light where we're going. Blessings to all of you. Thank you so much, Penny. I'm going to pull up some cards here on our way out. Of course, we're going back to Penny's website where you can find her, pennykelly.com. And here we have Past Lives Workshop, 50% off if you use the code PastLives50 till January 11th. And this was such a fun workshop to do. It's a 2-part series. And I feel like I need to go back and watch it and listen to it again, because it was just so, we planned it a bit, but it was very spontaneous, like you and I, Penny. So definitely worth checking it out. And I wish you all a beautiful week ahead. I'm going to also pull up the schedule here. What is around the corner? Let's have a look quickly. It's me tomorrow. The forecast for this upcoming week. And then Beyond the News on Monday with Jean-Claude and Janine at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Any last thoughts, Penny?
Really, I think the only thing that keeps coming to me over this first few days of the new year is make it a new year and a new you. Make that happen. And don't try to do it all in one bite, little bites, little steps, baby steps. So, yeah, that's it.
Totally. Wonderful. Beautiful. Have a great few days,
Yeah.
everybody. We'll see you again here very soon.
Okay.